right, I think we're pretty good to get started. All engines go. Beautiful. Well, welcome everyone to Edu Reading for September, one of my favourite months. We are the lovely trio, Mark, Parry, Stephen Kolber, and these are our lovely faces here.
Why is September your favourite month, Lottie? Sorry to interrupt the intro. Is it your birthday?
It's my birthday soon.
Oh, it's the birthday edition.
Yeah,
We should have worn hats.
Oh, soon. Not today. Maybe one day we'll have an Edu Reading birthday on our birthday, event on our birthday. Anyway, this is us. We are going to spend the next hour chatting about the books we've read or listened to, things we've been thinking about. I would love to hear from you in the audience as well. Use the chat and we'll get going. Is there anything I've missed, Mark and Steve?
No,
Nope.
that sounds good to me.
How are you both?
Good.
How do you
That's
feel
good.
about September?
Well, it's my least favourite month now. Now when it's Lottie's birthday, I mean, ugh.
Oh, how sad. All right.
September is also a month, yeah. Like October's more my stuff.
Oh, good to know. All right, Mr.
no,
Parry, over to you.
We should say we do normally have a guest author, but we haven't organised it this time. Over to you, Mark.
Thank you.
We do have
we've got
many
people arriving
guests
in
in the
dribs and
audience.
drabs, so just let them in as we see them. Now, my background is not a library; it's a Lifeline book fair near where I live. So I don't know. Do you have Lifeline book fairs where you live? It's like a huge, massive secondhand book sale, but they're not just kind of any old books. They do have a quality kind of, offering. Every sort of topic, there's a whole big education table generally. And you pick up books for $1, $5, $2. And then it goes to Lifeline kind of phone counselling type of charity. So, yeah. So that's my background.
Did you actually buy any books there, or did you just visit?
I take shopping bags, those kind of, those ones, the reusable bags. I go prepared. It is that.
Yeah,
like that. They sell jigsaw puzzles. Oh, yeah, Carolyn?
I've been to those in the olden days, in the past, when I was near, they were, Sacred Heart did them, and there was another group that did it, and you got lots and lots, and it was scary. I was forbidden to take my wallet.
The offerings, it's all there. It's like a bit overwhelming at times.
You
just got to kind of control yourself, or that's one theory anyway.
Yeah. Well, I have no control, so.
I'm going to get started with what I've been reading. I won't dwell on this one, but I did read this one or listen to it. It's a very famous book, and I've only ever seen the film, so I sat and listened to Fahrenheit 451, and it's kind of almost like a trio of the what's Big Brother? What's that one? 1984, and the other one, Brave New World. And then this one is sort of like in the same sort of dystopia. So, yeah, it's on reading lists from years gone by. So that was good. But then what I wanted to talk about, I read this book, which is called How to Write a Thesis by Umberto Eco. Because in Audible, it was a free kind of, it was available at no cost for me as a member. And I thought I really liked The Name of the Rose, which he wrote. And I thought, what a strange kind of book. I thought, I'm not about to write a thesis, but I like being an educator, learning designer. I like how-to books, books that try and explain something. And so I thought I'm going to give this a listen, knowing it would be a little bit different or, something about it. And it was written in 1977, and it's only more recently been translated into English. And then I read it, and I enjoyed reading it. It was a little bit nerdy. And then when I was Googling around, I found that the New Yorker has done. They did a review on it, and the Guardian did a review on it as well. And you think, oh, right. So not many books that would be how to write a thesis would get a book reviews, but essentially the short version is, of course, there's the nuts and bolts and how to put a thesis together. But if you imagine it, because it was written in 1977, a lot of the technology, there's no kind of real even mention of computers or networked libraries. And so all of the stuff is like carrying a little box of cards around and typing up titles of books and making notes. So it's like the discipline of, refining your topic. And apparently in Italy, it's a requirement for like that whole PhD higher ed territory. So it's kind of like a more standard than in Australia. And so I would recommend it if you are in the business or in the territory of writing a thesis. I think, it's a lot of how to and, nuts and bolts to kind of give you some ideas. But then because his voice is sort of there the whole way through, it's like he's talking. I suspect that he wrote it because he would have had lots of requests being an academic. So he thought, well, if I just write this one book, I can just point students in that general direction. So any comments from Stephen or Lottie or anyone else? I don't know if anyone's read it.
I'm just laughing because you said these would be relevant books to the Kolberverse. And I was thinking, who's in the Kolberverse? My whole family or my extended family?
Just you.
Just you.
I'll read it. I like the sound of the audiobook version, as you know. That's much more. I'll have to see if I can get it for free, but otherwise, that's good. Should I read Fahrenheit 451?
Oh, haven't you
It's
read
on
that?
hold.
You haven't read it?
No.
Sorry, Stephen.
Didn't know I had to until today.
Sounds like you have to.
Oh my God, I just can't. Yeah, okay, sorry.
No, it's so profoundly relevant to our contemporary age, even though it was written a long time ago.
But it's been on English reading lists for
Ever.
forever in every country I've been in.
Well, we won't spoil it. Stephen, check out both of these books. That's my recommendation. And then, in fact, extending into the Kolberverse, I have a book on my to-read list, and I stumbled upon this podcast. So I guess I know that you can treat a podcast as a text, as I understand. So I listened to this, Philosophize This, and the bloke that runs it, or, is the host, he has an episode about a particular philosophy or philosopher and their ideas, but he demystifies it. And so I thought I'm going to listen to that from beginning to end to find out what the famous pedagogy of the oppressed is about. And I thought it was really quite interesting. There's kind of lots of challenging ideas. And I guess I'm all now primed to read the actual text itself. But as far as a podcast episode goes, it was very succinct, lots of really kind of thought-provoking, quite challenging of, established systems, if I say it that way. So that's about me done, I reckon. Unless there's any questions, I'm going to just check the chat to see if there's...
Just to be clear, Mark, that doesn't count as having read the book. Sorry.
No, it doesn't. I'm trying to... I'm clutching at straws here, hey?
I walked past a book sale for this
Yes,
one.
he does, Grant. Sorry.
And then
So all the links are in here.
Oh.
I'm just
Day of
popping
the
it in the chat.
Triffids, I noticed someone has mentioned as well.
Excellent.
So there you go. And I've read lots of other books, but they're the kind of most educationally related ones I thought I'd bring up.
Excellent.
You got to put the podcast in the chat.
Oh
for
yeah,
us,
I will.
and
I'll do that now.
And then
and
we
it's
can
already in the Wakelet. There you go.
All right, you're one step ahead of us.
I haven't really told you
Lovely.
what the pedagogy of the oppressed is about, but it's a, you know,
What's
challenging.
the high level takeaways that you got from it,
Um,
Mark?
people or students, maybe that if they have a particular mindset, and I don't mean Carol Dweck kind of, but it is in that territory though. It's like a mindset of, I can't do this for these reasons. It's almost like a self-defeating attitude. And so if that's systematized into educational systems, that can be quite tragic if you've got a someone with a lot of potential that kind of gives up. They don't push themselves, and then they kind of feel as though they're kind of what's the point type thing. And I mean like on a philosophical level, kind of pedagogical, social level. So it taps in. I'm being a bit flippant with my tone, but it taps into some really big solid ideas related to equity, injustice, all the biggies. And so, yeah, I just felt this was a really nice, clear, everyday language kind of demystified version.
That would.
What's that, Carolyn?
Sorry, I was just going to say that may be of interest to Stephen because it ties into all that stuff about decolonization.
Yeah, most definitely.
The effect that the dominant pedagogies have taken over.
It's all about territory.
Cases. Yeah. So
Stephen has done his homework and he read it last month, Carolyn.
Did he?
Yes.
That's why Mark has to pretend to have read it this month.
Well,
I read it twice.
Read it.
So,
I listened to the podcast instead of reading the book, like the Cliff Notes, I guess.
Yeah,
I've attempted to read it twice.
Podcasts are a text, says Mark.
They are.
Come on, Mark. I'm getting in trouble for
Even
not having
this
read
bottle
two books I've never even heard of.
Chewing gum is a text. I can read the label. I think that's me done for the moment anyway.
Excellent. Well, I'll go next. I have a question for you, Stephen and Mark, before I start sharing my books. What do you remember about your first year teaching? I know it wasn't that long ago.
Lots of tears. Are we allowed to say that? Tears, crying,
photocopying,
reflecting on if I'd made the wrong choice. Lots of that. Is that the kind of thing we're talking?
Sure. Whatever. If you're listening, put your reflections in the chat. I'm just quite interested because this was the first book that I read, and I believe we might have a ding.
I've got one of them.
Excellent. So I read Celia and Margarita's book, Keeping Up with Teaching, which is designed for pre-service teachers. And I have to admit that it was a long time since I was a pre-service teacher, and I trained to be a teacher. I started teaching at 21 in New Zealand. I was dating a DJ. I was, living out of home. I was, having a pretty exciting life in Auckland.
I'm loving this backstory, Lottie. Go on.
So I was sort of casting my mind back to that first year of teaching and trying to remember, what it was. But yeah, crying in the toilet definitely happened. Being stressed out about difficult parent conversations. So this book, and Celia would love to hear from you soon, is for pre-service teachers. It's really empowering. It's really encouraging. It's sort of what I got from it was, it helps pre-service teachers really think about finding their confidence, finding their place in schools. And, it's not like this is how you teach. There's some practical examples in there, which are great. But yeah, I think it's great that there's a book out there, not just for pre-service teachers, because we're starting to see a few of those now, actually, because when I was teaching, there were definitely not books for pre-service teachers. There was like academic books, and that was kind of it. So it's cool that there's these books out there, I think, for pre-service teachers as well. Yeah, but Mark and Stephen, you haven't read it yet, have you?
No, that's why we've got to wait. Our lovely authors have to wait till we've all read it, and then we can ask probing and insightful questions rather than just go, Yeah, it's on the bottom. It's underneath another one that we have to finish as well. And, you know.
I like the little reflection questions through it as well, Celia. They were great. They really kind of help you. The second book I read is Curating Inquiries, Curriculum Design and Mapping for Primary Schools with Grant, who we've also got here tonight. You can see I've been busy. This was a great book. I'm a big inquiry learning fan, so it was good to kind of go back to this and look through. And I found it was a bit of a mix. Grant, I'd be interested in to hear from you. A bit of a mix between, like, there's a bit about like what is inquiry, the philosophy of inquiry, the timelines of inquiry, and then some really practical chapters on how do you actually map across the curriculum? How do you approach mapping inquiry learning in your school, things like that. And then there's a great section on student voice at the end, which of course is becoming pretty mainstream conversation in schools now, which is awesome. And then, yeah, I like the end as well, that you had your little summary and the bullet points. I like the fact that you could flick to the back and go, yeah, boom, boom, boom. This was in that chapter. And bonus points for having a playlist that goes with your book. Yeah, that was cool. I haven't listened to it yet, but I will. So Grant and Celia, do you want to sort of just jump up and just do a quick share or reflection on, tell me that I completely misunderstood your book? Or
ladies first, Celia, you go.
Oh, I'll be quick. No, you didn't.
Can we pin Celia just while she's up here? Stephen, king of the pin.
Can do, yeah.
Hi, Celia.
Oh, there I am. Hi. Thanks, Lottie. Yes, no, you got it right. You got it right. Yeah, pre-service teachers and yeah, sure. And graduate teachers, you know, those in their first, second year of teaching, really even third year. That's who mine and Margie's audience are. And they are our cohort that we work with every day in our work that we do at the universities. So we hear a lot from pre-service teachers how nervous they are when they walk into a school. It's not what they expect, you know, what they think teaching is going to be like is nothing as soon as they've walked into a classroom, it's kind of out of what they thought and all sorts of things. So yeah, this book was really just to support them in understanding that, you know, being a teacher is more than just getting up in front of in your class and you know, teaching a group of students, you know, every day. It's about those connections you make with your wider community, colleagues, staff, making sure you don't forget anybody within your school community, including, you know, canteen staff, the cleaners. Like, the school's about everybody that's in it. So it's supporting that notion of understanding how to belong to the school communities that they're in, how to really understand what being a teacher is, apart from what what we all know what is about. Yes, what is success as a teacher? What is it? It's not just about getting everybody, you know, to level 28 in reading or an A on their, you know, on their test. Yeah.
I thought the chapter around like identity was quite interesting too, which is, you know, that because we are so public facing as educators, that many educators feel they have to hide aspects of their identities, whether that's, you know, their
really
sexual identity, the cultural identity, whatever that is, particularly if they're in small communities. So it was interesting to see that explored.
When I started teaching, you know, 27 years ago, I've always taught actually in the Catholic system, not because I'm a staunch Catholic. I went to Catholic schools and it's kind of what I did, you know. So I just followed that trend. And I remember when I got engaged, I was 25 years old and I got engaged and I was working at a Catholic school. And my now husband, I could not tell anybody when they said, oh, how did he propose? I actually lied about how he proposed, because at the time, I couldn't say how he had proposed, because in the Catholics, my principal would have looked at me in disgust. And she was she was great, right? But still, it just wasn't said, right? When I think now, my goodness, so you had to cope, right? So I actually lied about how he proposed. I didn't say I was at his house. I didn't say that I was actually at his house. I just said we went out for lunch. I lied, and everybody clapped at the staff meeting, and that was it. And I just sat there and went along with it. So, but you can't, But that was then, and nobody would say anything about that. Then it was kind of what you did, yeah. But now you would never, I can't imagine telling a pre-service teacher or to do that now. I can't even in my mind imagine. But but it still is it's not a thing, but it still is something that people struggle with, their identity, whether they are, whatever walk of life they come from and what they choose in life. It is still something that they tread very carefully on. So it's important that we really teach our students, our pre-service teachers, how to enter in those sorts of conversations and how to normalise, who they are, type of thing. So, awesome. Anyways,
thanks, Ellie. We'll have to get you back because once Stephen and Mark have read the book.
Yeah,
great.
It's interesting, but thank you very much.
Yeah, great. Grant, do you want to jump up and tell me whether or not I got the themes right, or?
Well, without listening to the playlist, you stuffed it, Lottie, obviously.
Well, I mean, if you got the playlist part right, then I think you basically nail it. It's all about the music. No, I think for me, a lot of my journey has been around inquiry-based teaching. I think just with the early on, I started teaching in schools that was a big part of the pedagogy there, and it just became part of who I was as a teacher. And as I progressed through, I worked in a variety of schools in overseas in Australia, and was able to work out that inquiry and made sense. Worked in some IB schools as well, and so what I tried to do is capture, I suppose, from a coordinator's perspective or as a curriculum leader's perspective. Here's a bit of a how-to guide. If you're interested in inquiry-based teaching, here's kind of what it's about. Here's how you could frame it, and then here's how, when you're in front of the kids, some stuff that you could do that I don't know. It's going to work in some contexts. It's going to work with some students. Going to work with some teachers. Some of the times, just what you try 1 year with one group of kids is going to nail it, and it's amazing. And then you go, right, I got this inquiry thing down pat, and then next year rolls around, you're still in grade 5, you may have the same unit, you drop that on them and it just falls flat. So nothing's going to be 100% bulletproof or incredible all the time. But
I just had a question. Is the territory of inquiry almost defined by, little kind of, you have to reinvent things each time, it's never the same. You kind of
I suppose in some ways it can be characterized by that. I wouldn't necessarily define it that way. I would probably suggest that with any sort of good teaching practice, there's a reflection and the nuance changes for cohorts of children you have. I think the really cool thing about inquiry is, as teachers, we don't want to get bored by doing the same things, and the different kids throw different questions at us, and it gives us that opportunity to go and explore different things. So I think it's almost permission giving rather than a definition.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Grant, I thought just one more thing before we I let Stephen share his books. I thought the inclusion of the Uno game activity was really interesting. Do you want to just share that? Because I thought that was very clever activity to do with staff and PD.
Yeah, so I won't use names because it's confusing, but in essence, my philosophy is I don't believe that inquiries need to go for a term. I think they should go for as long as they need to go for it. As you can see, there's not a lot of hair on the top of my head because sometimes you pull it all out because you're bored to snores because the unit goes for too long, or you have the opposite problem of it's not going for long enough and you've got to stop because you've got to stop. So the idea of just getting groups of 4 or whatever around a table at a closure date, everyone's playing a game of Uno, and you say that it's going to finish after 2 minutes and whatever happens whatever finishes after 2 minutes, that's exactly what happens. At 2 minutes, some people finish, some people won't, and some people will be sitting going, "Oh, that was great," and I got 2 games in, and some people will be wanting to finish theirs. So I think that's just analogous of what inquiry or inquiry-based learning and teaching can be like. Sometimes it finishes when it finishes, not when we say it finishes.
Yeah, fantastic. Cool. Any questions,
No worries.
Kolber? Or we're good?
What would you say to the people who say inquiry sucks
Yeah.
and we should be doing in direct instruction and that old chestnut? What would you say to them?
Oh,
Never heard that
I mean,
before.
then you probably haven't heard my response. But no, realistically, in any stage during an inquiry, there's going to be times when there is direct instruction. There's no two ways around that. Like, you're changing gears, and sometimes when you're doing the finding out or the tuning in, that's when the teacher's in charge of everything, and you're the giver of knowledge or the setting up of things. So, but yeah, look, I would say that anyone that says inquiry sucks probably hasn't done it well or hasn't experienced it well. But in essence, like, most of the learning that we do as adults or outside of school learning is probably more closer to inquiry-based learning than direct instruction is. So I'd say if you want to go with a more organic and natural way of learning, come and join us in Inquiry Land. But if you like to kind of live in a really structured kind of world and that works for you, then there's a place for you as well.
I don't know if you know this book, but Jess Vance has got one about using inquiry for PD. So not just in the class, just really designing your PD around the inquiry philosophy. So that was something I read a little while ago too.
Yeah, kind of just on that. That's one of the great ironies that I reckon exists in the world. That when you go to inquiry PL, most of the deliverance of it doesn't match the pedagogy. But anyway, that's just an aside.
Yeah, I've observed that phenomenon.
Amen.
Awesome. Thanks, Grant.
Cool.
That's
Thank you.
awesome.
Thank you.
Well,
So what have you
was
been
Brian, you
reading,
didn't engage in
Stephen?
our binary argument. No fun.
I always
No, I was just going to say inquiry, the International Baccalaureate, Australasia is the fastest growing region for IB in the world. There's been huge growth down here. So it's, there's people maybe saying it sucks, but there's a lot more people saying it doesn't.
yeah, it's an
internal,
it's an eternal sort of balance of, the two opposing forces almost. It just sort of fold back into each other without getting too abstract. Stephen, what have you been reading?
But the inquiry folk don't want to engage in the debate, It's like the black and white thinkers are like, we must be black and white. And the inquiry people are like, I mean, you can if you want, but it's more fun over here. You go and have your fight with yourself. Anyway, that's what I reckon. That's my psychoanalysis of the debate.
Oh,
but
we're going to be bombarded. Right. We've got civics and citizenship, AI and teachers.
Well, I'm kind of like, I don't really want to talk about all the Amber Press ones because we'll probably have them here and they'll come talk to us about it. But so I read Nick Jackson's The Next Word and Matt Esterman's AI and Teachers. Leading Positive Classrooms, which is another Amber. And Chris Hudson and me worked together way back in the day. But his book was real good for me as a person who's not in a classroom at the moment. Finished Shyams not that long ago. Thanks, Alicia, for that one. But really interesting. We got to talk about Keith's book. So Keith's book, and I have to podcast with him just so I can set up my joke, which is that he and I co-edited a book together and I did such a bad job that he replaced me with AI. So this book is Keith Heggett and AI. And so he's like introducing the chapters, but the chapters are written by AI learning models which have been fed on the articles that Keith have said are good. And so, fascinating.
How intriguing.
Very interesting, isn't it? Any thoughts, Mark? What do you think?
I'll keep quiet for the moment.
Oh,
But
okay.
I guess the authorship kind of, brings into question authorship and ideas and process publishing.
Mm,
Yeah, I didn't realize. I saw that after the colon and I thought, what does that mean? What?
Mm.
But yeah, that kind of is new territory.
What were
And
some of the takeaways that Keith realizations that Keith came to after this little experiment?
well, haven't gone into detail about it with him yet, but it's on my list of things to do. But it's interesting because I think my understanding would be the use case for this is, so the idea is civics and citizenship education. If you've never heard of it, this book's kind of your intro to it, which fits me, other than talking to Keith every now and then. I had no idea what it was all about. And
Isn't there
so,
a podcast episode that might summarize this? No,
well,
I'm just referencing
then
our previous conversation.
no, well, that's what I'm saying. I need a podcast with him to get to the goss. But it's sort of, to me, that's the use case. Someone saying, I don't know anything about this, but because of technological limitations, it uses quotes, but it can't tell you what page the quotes are from. So I'm like, well, if you're trying to use it as a shortcut, get it to write your essay for you, sort of. You then have to go read the papers themselves, which is an interesting. That's kind of, I don't know if that's the only use case, but it's an interesting idea. Keith's bits were more interesting than the AI's bits, as you might imagine, but just fascinating as an idea. I really, Anna Crean, I did a podcast with her way back a long time ago when she wrote something about kids and technology, and she wrote like how the kids clutched to the iPads like a beloved child, and she had these really beautiful expressions. And then I finally got around to reading this book of hers, and it's real good. So it's your classic sort of starts off, does each of the characters in turn, and then they all meet in a bar, and it's exciting, intense, and good. Dirtball Islanders was real good. I heard her talk to a little group of researchers and me. And if, for Alicia, this is like Winnie Dunn is like the anti who's my enemy from last month? Bree.
Oh, Bree
She's
Lee.
the anti-Bree Lee. It's like she's lived a life, she's got experiences. She writes about her Islander family, and it's hard to explain, but it's like she writes about her, obese mum and her obese grandma, and she writes lovingly about, their pillowy thighs and pillowy waists, and it's like very interesting compared to, what we normally hear about overweight people being the worst and all that sort of stuff. It's like an interesting framing
Where
for
is
that.
it set?
Kind of like Mount Druidy, sort of out that way from
Australia?
me. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's kind of like Islander in Australia.
Yeah.
There's a lot of going to KFC and that sort of thing. But yeah, just the kind of writing that, like, I don't know, where you just go like, oof, that's a good sentence, Like
It's going on my to read list for sure.
she kind of like, she, instead of just saying we went back to our house, she calls her house like the house of Ferengi or whatever. Like it's just all of these layers of like symbolism and beautiful writing. I've got tabs here. Sorry, I'm disorganized. I'm organized, but also forgetful of what I've done. Rain Heron was good too. And I just interviewed Renee Kneiber about his book Formative Action.
Oh, I liked your microphone. I saw that, a little bit of that.
It's here. I'll bring it down. I should use it.
Whoa, baby.
But yeah, he wrote the book Flip the System way back in the day. And my interview with him is pretty much just me talking about the Netherlands. And he writes all these books and then he gives them away for free as a PDF. And I'm like, you're not allowed to do that. Anyway, but it's kind of like, I should probably shut up soon, shouldn't I? But formative action in the Netherlands, it's like formative assessment. It's like it came to them late, and you'd have to listen to the podcast to understand how. But it's like the rest of the world was like formative assessment in 1998. But then in the Netherlands, it came to them in like the 2000s. And so he was able to like read about how formative assessment had progressed in the world, how it had gone wrong, like all the failures that had happened across different countries in relation to formative assessment. And then he wrote his book informed by like the failings of everyone else, which is like amazing. But yeah, I'll stop talking. But real good books this month, very exciting.
I like.
Did you not share the AI Matt Esterman book because you're hoping to have one of those authors as a guest later, or did you just?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Right.
Yeah.
I liked how you were inspired by the author like years ago, or however long it was, but then you kind of, you know, got him into a conversation, and that's very cool.
Well, actually, my main question for him was like, you've written Flip the System, that's like burn everything down, the teacher should be in charge, you know, burn the politicians. And then he's written this book that's much more like conservative, like whilst you're teaching really good, here's how to do it more betterer. And my question for him was like, how can you write both? Like one is the, you know, one's like pedagogy of the oppressed and the other one's like how to ask good questions in class. Like they're different.
And what was his answer?
Well, he said, well, I've written 20 books and they're just 2 of them. And I was like, oh, okay. I'll shut up then. Sorry about that. Carry on, that kind of thing.
Some fanboy you are.
Well, most of them are in Dutch, I think, in my defense. So, you know, I didn't have to explain that one away. But I want to hear about other people.
Right.
Concept of beauty is a cultural concept. That's true.
We have an enthusiastic Paul, I believe.
Yes, I missed out last month because everyone was talking. By the time I opened my mouth, it was too late. So I'm getting in now. This is this. I found there's a couple. One I'm just starting to look at, but one I've read line by line, and because I was asked to by the author. And I think Rebecca was going to do some teaching in biology, according to the chat on this. So I'll add this. It's by a character called Christian Moore Anderson, and it's called Difference Maker. And what I find interesting about this is that he's change it like that's right. He's very believer in a biology teacher. I think he teaches in Spain, and he's very much a believer in systems thinking and systems theory, which is very much the foundation of some of my work as well. Only he's turned it a bit on its head by saying, well, instead of just talking about systems learning in biology, why don't we make it the pedagogical tool? So he trains the students in systems thinking and then puts all of the subject knowledge through the lens of systems.
What's the author, Paul? Sorry.
Look, I'll try when somebody else is talking. I'll find it and link
perfect. Pop it in the chat.
I thought it was very interesting. I've followed his conversation for some time, and he actually asked me to read through it line by line and comment. So I did a bit of editing and sort of generally quizzing. And it's his second book. The first one was Biology Made. I think it's called Biology Made Real. This one is a take from that. So the first one was I use systems in teaching. And this one, I use systems as teaching. And given the interconnectedness of, he was complaining about biology being too atomized, that you're dealing with individual parts of a system.
Can you give us an example?
Yeah, what's systems thinking? Like that's the missing piece here for me.
Oh, okay, easy. Input, use, output, feedback, microphone. Scream into a microphone too close, or play guitar too close to the loudspeaker, and you'll get a squeak. That's the feedback.
Looking at the interconnectedness of everything, and so like if you look at a
It's
jumper, you're looking at the
in
wool,
ecology.
the grass that feeds the animals that make the wool, the labor that goes into the animals that feed it, and you can have very complex, so one small thing can impact.
Oh, yes, chaos theory. This is the butterfly in Brazil and the storm in China kind of thing. But okay, simple example. You've got a woodland. Think of all the things that come into a woodland, the animals, the plants, the birds flying overhead. They interact, they eat, they die, they
Yeah, part of
they
the ecosystem.
decompose. So that goes out of the system. Then the nutrients come back and feed the next one, the next iteration. Malthus went back 1790 something, but I haven't got the data in front of me. For population, too many people will outstrip food supply, and you have famine.
Easter Island.
No, it isn't.
No?
Easter Island isn't. There was research published last week
Oh,
about the
no.
DNA, the genetics of Rapa Nui, of Easter Island, that in fact it wasn't what they call
everyone reckons.
ecocide. It was a slow genetic change. So I've used that example for so often, and now I can't
I'll make a
anymore. I'm really
note.
upset. Damn DNA.
But isn't it what you're describing? Isn't it like just ecosystem, sort of like just broad, like the web of life? You know, that type of thing. How is this sort of different? This what you're
Because if
describing?
you look at most biology syllabi, they are not designed like that. If you look at most chemistry, physics,
Yeah, no, I gotcha.
they're all atomized. They're all let's look at
Atomized is a
respiration.
bloody
Let's
good
look
word.
at metabolism.
There's a big movement in education at the moment across the board, not just in biology, around regenerative education and using systems thinking tools. I use them in my work. I use them with the young people to understand the interconnectedness and problem solving and understanding when you make decisions, the impact. It's quite complex work, but I've just popped a link in for some really good activities you can use in
You've got it
classrooms.
in there. Thank you.
Yeah. And Rebecca, I understand that the lady from Compass is actually coming to your school. Maybe you don't know this, and maybe you do. I don't know. To do some PD early next year, because I know her. So she mentioned she was coming out to Wesley.
Did not know. Which campus? Because we've got three.
Cameron Patterson's organising it.
Still doesn't help because we've still got 3 campuses.
Okay. Don't know.
They just said the good one, so you'll know which one.
Yeah.
So Glen Waverley. I'll be seeing Cameron on Thursday.
Yeah. Hopefully that's public knowledge, and I haven't put my foot in it.
Oh, that's okay. That's all right. I'll just, he just knows that I know people, so that's fine.
Okay, there's just to sort of stir things a bit. I haven't finished this. I've just started to look through it. I was reviewing another book this afternoon, which was on the history of natural history, but that's nothing to do with this. I came across this when I was looking for something else. This is how I find most of my books. I'm looking for something, I can't find it, but I find something really interesting. And this is called, I will post the link because I don't know how I got to it. And it's called Educating for the Anthropocene.
Ooh,
which
another
is,
big one.
oh no, it's let's just put it this way. From what I've read, it's not a comedy. It's about I'll put the link in myself because I've just got, I think it's Sutoris is the author. It's about slow violence and education. It's the impact of colonialism, racism, and environmental degradation in South African schools. So it's not a comedy. It's pretty harsh. It's a Palafrere country.
Wow.
It's it makes uncomfortable reading.
But given that climate change education is seen as pretty radical, and for a lot of schools, I think we won't be seeing this one on the curriculum for a while yet, Paul.
Oh crikey, no! I mean, given I've been teaching climate change since 1974. I'm waiting for some curriculum to catch up with me. So, yeah.
Do you mean you're expecting curriculum to actually have a connection to the wider world?
Well, I tried with the Australian National Curriculum and lost because whereas I had the information, I didn't have the politics.
I was being incredibly facetious.
Oh no, knock yourself out. I've spent 2008 through 2018, fighting for a better national curriculum
Mm.
in geography. So, and it was, yeah, I better be careful what I say because it's recorded, but suffice it to say, politics won over politics and writing the textbooks, won over an ability to actually create a decent syllabus. And I'll leave it at that.
You're not going to get any argument here.
Yeah, no, naming no names, but yeah, I'll just leave.
Well,
I
Quick,
escaped
Grant,
a
save
meeting
us
without
before
getting
Paul
hit. Let's put it
perjures
that way.
himself.
Anyway,
Grant.
I hope that's given you something. I was a bit too silent last
No,
time. I
beautiful.
review books all the time, but very few of them are things you'd see here. I finished a brilliant one this afternoon, but it's not specifically educational.
Well, as I said in the chat, all books are welcome. We've had, you know, the guilty shares, the large print holiday reads. We're you know,
Okay, I'm going to
educators are allowed to read what we read, and it doesn't have to be
tell us a little bit
specifically
about Paul.
education, although it might
Okay,
get cut
I
from the
tell you what,
recording. So
Lottie, fair enough. Let me say, you can type this one in. It's absolutely genius. And when I threw the review off to my editor, she went out and bought the book, forgetting I'd recommended it, and she thought it was good. So there you are. I've got at least one sale for him. Ross Atkins, The Art of Explanation, if I can think of it correctly. Ross Atkins, BBC explainer extraordinaire. I think it's called The Art of Explanation, but it's Atkins, Atkins. Ross with only one S.
I found it. Yeah.
Oh, you're genius, aren't you? Sorry, Mark, I cut you off. I thought if I could put an extra one in, I would.
I want to. Well, you can tell us a short version, but we want to hear from Grant to come up and tell us about a couple of books he's been reading.
Okay.
Yep.
Put some reflections about it in the chat, Paul, because we do want to hear about it. And there's lots of books that link to education. They're not about education, but you know, education's about everything. So
Life is
I'm sure
learning.
there's
Oh,
systems
crikey.
thinking,
If I put up every
guys.
book I'd read or written reviews about, you'd get a few dozen. I should be selective.
Thank you, Paul. We got another. Carolyn wants to come up as well. So we've only got about 10 minutes left.
Nice.
I won't be as long.
all right.
I don't suspect.
Tell us all
Paul.
about
We'll
it.
see what happens.
What are you?
So the first one I read was Teachers as Architects of Learning, with a byline of 12 constructs to design and configure successful learning experiences, by Gavin Grift, Claire Major, and Janelle Wills. And that was an interesting read around the 12 different factors that teachers can play with or have some sort of sense of control over when it comes to setting up their world or their classrooms. And the really nice thing about it is it extends beyond, from my perspective, what I think of classrooms of being an adult with student learners, but it pretty much goes beyond that and starts exploring the world of any sort of education, whether it's at a TAFE or whether it's within a boardroom. Just you're dealing with people and you need to share information. Here's some 12 things that you have some sort of sense of control over. So that was really interesting.
A program of sorts, or is it a book, or both maybe?
It is both. So there is the book, which is kind of a broad brush strokes, and then I think Gavin runs it's like a 3-day intensive over periods of time. So you go away, you do one bit, and then you go away and come back and do check-in. So it is a professional development module as well. It sits outside of that. But yeah, it's a really interesting read, and it's quite anecdotally written, with lots of tales from the field. So yeah, there was an interesting space to dip into. I had the opportunity to meet with Gavin when I was down in Melbourne last time, and that was in May. So anyone who's in May in Melbourne, you know what May in Melbourne's like, and I live on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland, so you know what May's like for someone He lives on the Sunshine Coast. It's a little bit different to Melbourne. So yeah, I was down there and I hung out with him. And he recommended a few books, and that was the one that I took him up on. And then the other book that I read was that's kind of loosely related to education, although it really has nothing to do with it. And it was called Babel by R.L. Kwang or R.L. Kwong. I don't know how to say the surname. If you read the book Yellow Face, which was pretty popular maybe last year, maybe earlier this year, same author. But I'm a word nerd, and it was very much around the power of words and etymology, and something to do with silversmithing and how the words and had to line up the root origins to protect the realm of the British Empire. So it was a really different kind of read, but yeah, I love words and their origins. So for me, that was my happy place. So yeah, it was an interesting read.
That's cool,
Awesome.
Mike. You just made it to the list. That sounds good. Nice. Thanks, Grant.
No worries.
Pop them in the chat as well, and
Oh, yeah.
I'll add them to
That
the
would
wait
be
clip.
really good if you
Thanks,
pop it in the
Grant.
chat. Carol,
Thank you.
When you're up.
Uh,
Grant.
Who was
Rebecca?
next?
No,
Oh,
Rebecca.
is Rebecca up next, or what? Lottie, you
I had Catherine.
Catherine. Sorry, Catherine.
Karen,
Yeah.
sorry.
All right,
Sorry.
hello everyone.
Hi.
I am currently doing an online classroom management course run out of the University of Adelaide, and somebody on there recommended a book, and perhaps everyone here is already familiar with it, but it was new to me, called When the Adults Change, Everything Changes. You familiar with that one?
No.
Heard of it, not read it.
Yeah, so
Oh, yeah.
I've been reading that and really enjoying it. It really resonates with me in a lot of what, I feel in my context, that, that I think that we have to lead, and sometimes we're very good at coming up with all these reasons why things aren't working, the children this, the home environment that, and I think, perhaps we can't do anything about that side of things, and we have to change. We have to bring about the change from ourselves. Yeah, thank you. So there's that one, and the other one that I was just going to share, which is not directly related to education, but I'm very much enjoying at the moment. I came to it from my all-time favorite podcast, Cautionary Tales, with Tim Harford, and it's called The Art of Fairness by David Bodanis. I'm going to try and pronounce it like that. And it's talking about how it gives lots of different little scenarios and situations from history, real stories from history, and how whether we're, thank you, that's the one, whether a very fair and just kind of perspective from the leader in whatever situation it might be, whether it be the leader of a country or the leader of a company or the leader of an activity or something, whether a very fair and just approach works, or whether the what's the word, somebody who's ruthless, whether that wins in the end. And in the podcast, there's a couple of podcast episodes. I think there's going to be more. At the moment, there are 2 that are related to this book, but they share the story of a baseball coach from the US who kind of coined the phrase, or it's attributed now to him, nice guys finish last. And so, it's kind of just comparing those 2 situations. And I just feel it really also connects with education, because, and as I said, I'm, doing this course on classroom management at the moment. And the way we approach our classrooms and our students, and what attitude and what kind of perspective we take to that, and how that might play out. I thought it all kind of ties in with that. So highly recommend all of those.
Beautiful. Thank you, Catherine. Exciting. All right, Carol, you got 5 minutes. Quick. No pressure.
Pop them in the
Won't
chat.
take long. No, I was just thinking about this conversation, and Stephen, when I sort of had a little dig about Fahrenheit 451 and as an English teacher, but that's what we read. I read lots of poetry and novels and plays and all the rest, but what we didn't read were books about the art of teaching. We didn't read the books that you're reading, which I find really interesting. There has been a real move towards teachers actually exploring the concept of what it means to teach and how you do it and all the rest of it. We got a little bit in our dip ed training, but mostly whether we didn't have time or I couldn't be bothered.
I don't think we're a representative sample necessarily of any group, let alone teachers, but
yeah, I was too busy trying to read lots of fiction and the stuff that I love. But I think it's good. I came across a young lad during last week. His name's Tom Marnie. I don't know if any of you have caught him. He's doing his PhD at Deakin, and he's doing his PhD on this type of thing about how we talk about, how teachers talk about what they do. And it just interests me because you've read a lot more than I have in any of those things. That was all.
It's still much less intelligent.
We do, Stephen and I say sometimes that by having this event, it keeps us honest and on track to continue to read. So we obviously all love reading, but it's great because we know that it's coming, awesome. And it certainly pushes me to read a bit more.
I've been holding on to the book I told you about, Thriving in a Divergent Mind, Thriving in a World Not Designed for You, which I got from Alex Box at EduTech. She suggested it. So I've got it. I haven't read it yet, but I've got it.
Tell us about it when you have.
I shall.
We've got a comment from Matt about keeping up with teaching.
Yeah, I didn't know if there'd be time. There's only 2 minutes left.
Come on, Matt. Come on, you can do it.
I'm trying not to just read the comment that I just typed out, but
just dictate it to us.
No, I think keeping up with teaching, the value was in reflecting on how much teaching has changed. For me, it's been 14 years, and I think the reflection opportunities and thinking about what a mess like the first year of teaching was, and the differences in the challenges between what a graduate or a pre-service teacher might have to walk into now is really fascinating. And I love a book of stories, and so this was awesome. And then I was reading Deep Thinking by Gary Kasparov, and I'm not much of a chess player. I'm a bit too impatient. But I got really lost in, I think the whole story is Gary versus the IBM machine, Deep Blue, but it's really about Gary versus Gary, and he's fighting himself and his own mindset, and it's all about getting inside your own head and being creative under pressure. And I think that really resonates with kind of how education is kind of being pushed. I think it is creativity under pressure, and trying to find authentic creativity in that kind of pressure cooker is really difficult. So I don't know, I just really enjoyed more than the analysis of artificial intelligence and where man sits next to it or people sit next to it. It was about, just being human and what barriers do you put up that stop or give you excuses to being successful. I thought it was really cool. And there we go, 9 o'clock. So that's me on mute.
Well done.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah.
All right, that's it. That's the end, people.
It.
Oh,
The bell's gone.
We've run out of time.
oh, but we've learned from Grant that learning doesn't stop just because a bell goes.
It keeps going. It goes when it goes. But maybe we've just run out of energy though as well, Lottie.
I've got my
It's
heater
hard to
on and I'm
tell.
wearing a jumper and I'm so red. This is why I'm so red. I need to go and turn the heater off. I want to do 2 quick shout outs. I will share this book next month. But I was super excited to get this book. It's called Where is the Teacher? Probably seen it on socials. Carl Wagner puts together 12 shifts that essentially support a student-centered classroom. He worked at High Tech High, which some of you might know from that documentary that was made forever ago, Most Welcome, Most Likely to Succeed. He worked there briefly. He's a PBL kind of practitioner, but he's got a great little diagram, and every chapter has these different shifts that you can make. And it's full of examples and case studies, and yeah, I think it's very practical, and I also love it because one of the schools I worked with is in there, so that's really exciting in the USA. The other shout out I'd like to do is for donut economics. Has anyone heard about donut economics? Is that familiar with anyone?
Vaguely, but
Vaguely, Paul. Yeah. So for the sustainability nerds in the room, donut economics is about how we live in a sustainable planet and don't overshoot with the resources we've got, but we also look after our population. So it's about, there's a whole model, there's a whole movement of it in education, and there is a whole new website with a whole lot of tools on it that is called Deal, with games and activities. It's a really interesting book. Donut economics, and she's made a book about economics that is for people who are not economics teachers. There's no numbers in there. It's nothing to do with numbers. I think it should be taught in every economics classroom in the world because it's really thinking about the future of our planet. So those are my recommendations for checking out, and I'll share next month.
Sounds good.
very good.
And we'll bring donuts as well.
Yes.
So I think we've had another successful event. I deem it to be
every
a
month
success.
you sound surprised.
Nice, Marcus.
No, it was nice to hear different perspectives and a bit randomness and group kind of perspectives.
If
Great to hear
anyone
from so
wants-
many different people this month. That was great.
If people want to keep talking, Friday nights on again from 4 till 7. The links will be in LinkedIn. Mark and I've had a couple of fun conversations.
Thank you, Carolyn. Yes, I've enjoyed our chats, and even I was getting some tips on classic literature interpretation and all that. Old Man and the Sea, I think we chatted about, and other kind of classic literature.
Don't take that I've read The Old Man and the Sea.
Oh,
Just
you're
to be
worse than
fair.
Stephen Colbert. What sort of English
It's been
teachers
a
are
long
you?
time since I've been on that one, but
We're reliant on you English teachers to have read the classics, all of them.
you see, that's the beauty of English teaching. You can't, no one teacher can know everything. So you have to be cooperative.
I think on that note, we might need to call it an evening. It's a nice sentiment to leave everyone on. Cooperation. I'm all for cooperation. Any final thoughts, Lottie or Stephen?
You may all go in peace. Amen.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone that chatted and contributed. And we'll put this up as a recording when we get around to it. Thanks again, everyone. We'll see you next time.
See you later.
Thank you.